guys, and welcome to another episode of the Runpreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Sierra Carter, and as always, we are here to run our lives instead of letting life run us. Especially this time of the year because it's busy. 2020 is almost over. It's December 9th already. What are you doing? Probably stressing out, right? Well, that's what today's episode is all about. So it's episode 83, Stress Less. It's by taking 5 minutes, a whole handful of fingers to yourself to look deep inside what you're avoiding, what's really stressing you out, and what you need to do about it. We might not get to what you need to do about it today, but we are going to get to identifying just what's stressing you out and what's on the back of your mind, because it might not be what you think it is. So that's what we're talking about on today's podcast. But before we get into that topic, I do have a few announcements. Shout out to everybody that is following me on Facebook, Instagram, on not Twitter. I mean, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm not doing anything on Twitter. And TikTok. You saw my jackfruit challenge last week. I got 50-pound jackfruit that I did a workout to. It was harder than you think. So if you'd like to go see that, that's on my TikTok and my Instagram. But if you are in the area, and I'm over in the Melbourne area, I am doing a few workouts before the holiday season gets started. I'm going to have a workout on every Tuesday at 6 p.m. and also every Saturday at 8:30. Of course, you missed the Christmas party if you're listening to this today, but of course, we're going to have a New Year's party and a Valentine's Day party and a St. Patrick's Day party. So just keep a lookout for those. But coming up, we do have a 12 Days of Christmas challenge. Now, the 12 Days of Christmas challenge does start on December 12th. So that's this upcoming, what day is that? It's a Friday? Is that Friday? Yeah. So that's this upcoming Friday, and we're going to start a Christmas 12 Days of Christmas challenge. And it's going to be based on virtual videos. You can do it wherever you are, if you're traveling and whatnot. There's going to be more information coming out about that tomorrow on my Instagram and my Facebook. So make sure you're following and you have the notifications on so you know when I'm coming out with that. My Facebook is @therunpreneur, and same with my Instagram. So quick fun fact is Runpreneur, so N-U-E-R. I know a lot of people are like, it's just supposed to be E-U-R. I did that on purpose because you got to create what you want. You got to create your life. Anyways, that's not important. What's important is today's topic, and that's on stress. So before we get into today's topic, I want to add a quote because I love quotes. So just take this as you will, and maybe this quote will help you throughout the day. I don't know who wrote it. I don't know who said it, but I did hear this quote, and I absolutely love it. So here's your quote. Challenges are what makes life interesting. Overcoming them is what makes life meaningful. You hear a lot today that, you know what, you're stressed out. There's a lot of challenges out there, and a lot of people just give up because they think life should be easy. I had that same mentality, but you know what? After 2020, life's not easy. It's never going to be easy. And if it's easy, you're not doing life right. You know, I think a lot of times we get comfortable, and we're going to talk about that today. If you're miserably comfortable and you think, well, this is easy, I'm just going to stay here for the rest of life, you're going to look back with a lot of regrets. So stress is just part of life. It's just learning how to manage it and cope with it. So that's why I've got this 5-minute exercise for you guys to do today. Even though you're stressed, it's going to be okay because you're going to get through it. So before we get into our topic of the day, let's hear from our first sponsor. All right, guys, so welcome back. We're going to get right into stress and identifying what stresses you out. And I've got a few steps for you. So before we get started, I either want you to listen to this and then go back and listen to it again when you are able to write down things on a piece of paper or your iPad or your computer or somewhere where you're going to be able to write notes about your thoughts. So if you're listening to this, you can't do that right now, go ahead and listen through this so you know what's coming ahead. if you're available to, grab your notebook, grab your pencil, whatever you have. Like, oh gosh, notebooks and pencils, like, so outdated. Grab your iPad, computer, whatever it is. And I want to bring up some, like, key ideas about stress and why it's so important to actually identify what is stressing me out when it's stressing me out. Because if you're anything like me, you have a really hard time doing this. Real quick. For the longest time, I was extremely stressed out about everything. Was I really stressed out about everything? No. I was stressed out about one thing that I pretended wasn't the problem. So what did I do? I took that stress and I shoved it towards everything else. So when people would talk to me, I'd be like, no, I'm stressed about this, I'm stressed about that, I'm stressed about this. When those things are tiny little problems. These are the things that people look at you and they're like, why are you stressed about that? Because, like, you could change that. You could do something about that. Why don't you do something about that? And you sit here and you're like, I can't do anything about it. I'm just really stressed. You can. You're not stressed about that because there's something underlying deep inside that you're stressing about, but you're avoiding it. And we have this tendency to avoid things that really stress us out, and we push it onto everything else. So that's why you're taking 5 minutes today. I'm not asking for 10. I'm not asking for 20. I'm asking for 5 minutes of your day so we can just walk through each part of our lives together, and I'm going to ask you a few questions. Maybe these questions spark a few, oh yeah, that bothers me. Or, this is fine. I guess this isn't stressing me out as much as I thought, so maybe this area of my life is stressing me out. So we're going to go through the areas of our lives. And I want you to be aware. I want you to see if something makes you feel uncomfortable, if you're like, please don't talk about that, or you shove it out of your mind right away. Or if you get angry about it. If you get angry about it, that could be a sign of stress. Or if you're like, I've completely avoided this topic. Like, I don't even think about this topic. I try not to think about this topic. If I think about this topic, I get overwhelming anxiety. If any of those feelings come up, that's probably a point of your stress. And if there's anything where you're like, oh, this is silly. Oh, I was probably stressing about this, but I don't need to. That's probably where you're pushing off the stress. So just think about it as we walk through these different sectors of our lives. And if you do find something, highlight it, write it down. Now, we're not going to talk about coping with it or learning how to change it or how to change our minds about it tonight, but we are going to talk about just identifying it. So next week's podcast will be on what are we going to do about it once we identify it. And you'll have a little time to chew and think about it this entire week, because it might take you a week to actually identify what's going on. This podcast might not even identify what's going on, but listening to it will make you aware. So let's go ahead and start with my first question that I like to ask myself a lot. How are you doing? Now, you probably get asked this every single day. I get asked this every single day, and people just respond, I'm good, I'm great, I'm fine, I'm well, thank you. But really be honest with yourself. How are you doing? Are you happy? Are you comfortably miserable? That's probably my favorite word. It's the worst word I've ever thought of, but it's very accurate for a lot of people. Where I'm not very happy, I'm actually pretty miserable with where my life is, but I'm comfortable where I don't care about doing anything about it. Where are you at? Before we dive into any sectors of our lives, where are you at? Make sure you're writing notes, you're highlighting, whatever it is you like to do. Just make sure you're doing it. Being honest with yourself. I'm not going to see these, and neither are your friends. So now that you have an honest answer for yourself, let's dive in. I like to call them the four pillars. And if I miss anything, of course, they probably fall into one of these categories anyways. Personal. Now, how are you doing personally? And I'm not asking now, how are you doing? Are you happy, sad? I'm asking, how is your health? How is your mental, emotional, and physical health? Are you stressed out constantly? This is your first question. Are you even stressed out? Maybe you're just avoidant. How are you doing? Are you overwhelmed? Do you feel out of control? I know I get that. I get like that all the time. Do you feel motivated? Are you waking up every day like, I cannot wait to get through this day? How does your body feel? Do you feel run down in the middle of the day? Do you feel like my body hurts all the time? Maybe you do feel like you're gaining weight. Maybe you feel like you're losing weight. How do you feel? And of course, are you going personally through any major life changes? Now, most of us, because of COVID, because of 2020, are probably going to say yes to that question. I know I am, and it's scary and super exciting all at the same time. So just ask yourself, personally checking in with yourself, how are you feeling? Now, again, are there any areas that make you feel uncomfortable? Maybe your weight makes you feel uncomfortable. Maybe it's your hair that makes you feel uncomfortable. Maybe your emotional and mental state do make you feel uncomfortable and you try to avoid thinking about what you're thinking. I'm not sure what areas of stressors are happening in your head right now. Number 2, because we got to get through this in 5 minutes. Family. How's your family doing? What stresses you out? What's good about your family? What stresses you out about your family? We're in the time where we're going to Thanksgiving, Christmas, everything's going to stress you out. You're around your family a lot, and not to mention you're all stuck inside under the same roof because of COVID. It's harder to go out and about and gather with family. So what's stressing you out about that? Maybe it is that you can't see your family this holiday season. What is it that stresses you out, that makes you feel uncomfortable or makes you want to avoid the conversation entirely? All right, now these last 2 are probably some of the biggest stressors with most people that we like to avoid or we like to really throw all our stress onto. And that is relationships and money. So let's start with relationships. Relationship-wise, friends, significant others, are you having drama? Do you feel lonely? What do you avoid thinking about here and why? Really be honest with yourself. Because if it's you feel lonely, are you not seeing your friends enough? Maybe you need to call a friend. Calling an old friend's always an awesome way to pep yourself up, to kind of reduce stress. Maybe you're just going through a really rocky situation with your significant other. Maybe you guys just broke up. Maybe you're going through a divorce. I'm not sure what it is. 2020 has really been hard on a lot of relationships, friends, and significant otherwise. It could be anything. So just be honest with yourself. And I think my best advice here would be don't hide these feelings. It's okay to not feel okay about a relationship with somebody else, whether it's a friend or a significant other. You can't hide these feelings because it's going to come out in bitterness and it's going to break you. So be honest with yourself. Be brutally honest through all these questions. And number 4, money. Money is a huge, huge, huge stressor, and you need to check in with yourself to see how you're doing. Are you a saver? Are you a spender? During the holiday seasons, do you have a bunch of presents to get people? Are you stressed about affording that? Maybe you're stressed because you just went through COVID and you lost your job and you don't know how you're going to afford everything. Maybe you're trying to get your kids Christmas gifts. What is stressing you out? Don't avoid it. Let it be there so you can deal with it. Because if you're pushing it in the back of your mind, that stress is only going to come out in every other area of your life, making your life a lot harder. So just to recap, because hopefully you're writing notes, hopefully you've reflected on this. Our 5 minutes is almost up. Make sure you're going through the stressors of your personal life, area of your life, your family area of your life, your relationship area of your life, and your money area of your life. Now, I know a few people are going to be like, well, what about work? Work kind of goes in there with the money. I like to add those two things together because work goes in with money or relationships, because the relationships you build with that work, they could be stressing you out. Or the money situation through work. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe you don't have a job. Maybe you're trying to find work. What is it? Work also goes with personal. Maybe you don't have a job and it's really tearing on you mentally. So just kind of shove that in there. I don't think it's a huge section of life that we need to segregate. I think it goes into everything because it's honestly part of your life. So just take that all in, encompass it all, and really dive deep and ask yourself each one of these questions. See what you're avoiding, see what makes you uncomfortable, and see what really is stressing you out, so it's not coming out in the other sections of your life. And once you do this, make sure you keep your notes. Make sure you keep your notes in a good place, in a safe place, or somewhere where you're going to be able to come back to them. Because next week we are going to talk, once you really figure out what's identifying or what's really stressing you out, we're going to talk about ways that we can a game plan. We can make a game plan how to de-stress yourself, how to look at things differently. Because it might be different problems, but there are very similar ways on how to deal mentally with these problems that we can get through. So just be honest with yourself this week, really watch out for these stressors, and take a deep breath, because things don't last forever. That's a good and a bad thing. Things won't last forever, things will always change, and that's the only constant that we have, is change. Alright guys, so that's all I have for today's podcast. I hope it was insightful. I hope it helped you really dig deep and see what is stressing you out, what might not be stressing you out, what you're blaming your stress on, and things like that, because stress is going to hit us all. It's just a matter of how we deal with it. And once we identify it this week, we're going to go right into next week's podcast on what we do once we realize what's stressing us out. Mentally and emotionally is how we're going to deal with it. Physically, that one's up to you if you want to fix the problem. So I'm going to have a lot of pointers, a quick blurb, 15-minute pointers to dealing and looking at stress in a different way next week. And with that being said, make sure you don't miss the next podcast by subscribing to this podcast channel or here on YouTube. So I'm here on podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever it is. And I'm also on YouTube, so give that a thumbs up, give it a like, and also subscribe, share it with your friends. Share it with 5 friends, and maybe someday you'll win a t-shirt. I'm not sure, I don't have that set up, but it's a nice thought. So get in the habit now, so when it becomes a thing, you'll win your t-shirt. So you guys, thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. I will see you again next week, and until then, you guys run your lives. Bye guys.